Have you ever felt that your endless acts of kindness, your constant willingness to give, have slowly begun to drain you? It's a common tale, yet one often untold. We're frequently encouraged to give without limits, to offer ourselves selflessly to those around us, to be the one who never says no. But the truth is that without boundaries, without a mindful approach to giving, kindness can transform from a virtue into a source of self-destruction. It becomes a force that consumes rather than elevates us. Ancient wisdom, especially Stoicism, sheds light on this hidden side of kindness. Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca understood the dangers of unchecked generosity. They knew that kindness, if not balanced with self-care and resilience, could drain our very essence, leaving us empty and overburdened. In this video, we will delve deeply into 4 ways that kindness can, surprisingly, ruin your life if you're not careful. We'll explore Stoic principles that offer guidance for practicing generosity without self-neglect, for setting boundaries that preserve your inner strength, and for embracing kindness in a way that is both sustainable and empowering. Stay with us until the end, where we'll reveal powerful strategies to make your kindness a source of fulfillment rather than depletion, rooted in timeless Stoic insights. 1. Neglecting self-care. Don't set yourself on fire to keep others warm. The old saying, "Don't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm," reminds us of a truth often overlooked in our rush to be endlessly giving. How often do we extend ourselves for others, giving more and more of ourselves without pausing to consider our own needs? In the drive to be seen as kind, we often forget a fundamental Stoic principle. To be of genuine help to others, we must first preserve and nurture our own strength. Imagine for a moment a gardener with 2 neighboring plots of land. One gardener meticulously tends to their own garden, balancing their resources and attention to ensure it flourishes. This garden becomes not only a source of personal joy, but also a space from which they can share their surplus with others. In contrast, the other gardener spends all their time tending to everyone else's gardens, neglecting their own. Over time, their plot withers, yielding little. Despite their best intentions, they end up with less to offer, not more. This analogy captures the Stoic view of balanced generosity. In Stoicism, balance is a virtue. It's the cornerstone of resilience and inner peace. Marcus Aurelius taught that kindness should not come at the cost of self-preservation. Without caring for ourselves, we cannot sustain the strength necessary to genuinely help others. Do you find yourself constantly giving, often at the expense of your own well-being? Do you feel the exhaustion creeping in, as though you're emptying yourself day by day? The path of excessive kindness often leads to burnout. When we give beyond our limits, we risk losing sight of our own needs. This doesn't mean that kindness itself is flawed. Rather, it's about cultivating a type of kindness that doesn't undermine our own vitality. By taking care of ourselves first, we ensure that our kindness remains a source of strength, not depletion. Reflection. Is this help sustainable? Before rushing to assist someone, ask yourself, is this sustainable? Am I in a place where I can give without compromising my well-being? In Stoic thought, it is important to act with intention, assessing our capacity to give and ensuring it does not lead to self-neglect. Consider the effect of your generosity on your life. Are you constantly tired? Are your resources dwindling because of the aid you offer others? Stoicism encourages us to reflect, to gauge our boundaries, and to understand when it's necessary to step back and recharge. Imagine yourself as a cup of water. If you pour out your contents without taking time to refill, there will come a moment when there's nothing left to give, and in that emptiness, frustration, resentment, and even bitterness can emerge. Stoic wisdom warns us that the purpose of kindness is not to strip ourselves of resources or strength. To cultivate a generosity that's sustainable, we must ensure our own needs are met. Stoicism and the art of balanced generosity. In Stoicism, the concept of self-care is not about selfishness, it's about self-preservation. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that life demands a delicate balance of giving and retaining. It's a life in which we can contribute positively without becoming a shadow of ourselves. For the Stoics, boundaries were essential to maintain this balance. Boundaries aren't barriers, they're markers of healthy self-respect. By establishing clear boundaries, we communicate to others that we value ourselves and our resources. Have you set boundaries in your own acts of kindness? Can you say no without guilt, without feeling that you're somehow failing others? The Stoic approach to kindness requires that we protect our inner strength so that, when the time comes to give, we give from a place of abundance, not scarcity. The paradox of self-care, giving more by giving less. It may sound contradictory, but by saying no and preserving your energy, you're often in a better position to help. Stoic philosophers recognized that a person who gives mindfully with self-care at the forefront can offer more profound, genuine support over the long term. They saw kindness as an art form, one that requires patience and wisdom, not endless sacrifice. Reflect on your current commitments and obligations. Are they aligned with your values and priorities? Or do they drain you, pulling you away from what truly matters to you? In the end, sustainable kindness is about prioritizing the quality of our interactions over the quantity. When we act with this mindful generosity, we not only preserve our own well-being, but we also become more capable of positively impacting others. While kindness may begin with good intentions, too much can lead to a trap of unending demands and requests. But how do we maintain kindness without being overwhelmed by others' expectations? In the next section, we'll explore the importance of setting healthy boundaries. 2. Ignoring boundaries, the danger of unending requests. One of the most insidious ways that kindness can ruin your life is through the slow erosion of boundaries. When kindness is limitless, it opens the door to unending requests, expectations, and sometimes even exploitation. How often have you found yourself saying yes simply because it's easier than explaining a no? This cycle can turn even the most generous spirit into one that feels trapped and overwhelmed. Stoicism, however, teaches us the necessity of setting boundaries, a lesson that helps us remain grounded and preserves our inner peace. Imagine the story of a mother and her adult daughter. Out of love, the mother offers her constant support, shielding her daughter from any hardship or responsibility. But in doing so, she unknowingly prevents her daughter from developing the skills necessary for independence. It is only when the mother is no longer there to assist that the daughter is forced to embrace her own strength. Stoicism reflects on such dynamics, cautioning against the kind of kindness that enables dependency. Marcus Aurelius famously wrote, "A man's job is to stand upright, not to be kept upright by others." Reflection: are your boundaries clear? Have you taken the time to consider your boundaries? When others ask for help, do you ask yourself whether this act of kindness is truly beneficial in the long term? Stoic philosophy emphasizes that a virtuous life requires a balance between supporting others and fostering their own self-reliance. We are not meant to carry others through every hardship, but rather to provide support that empowers them to walk their own paths. In the absence of boundaries, kindness turns into an overwhelming obligation, draining our time and energy until we feel as though we're living more for others than for ourselves. Setting boundaries is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of self-respect and wisdom. As Epictetus would remind us, some things are within our control and others are not. Our actions, choices, and boundaries are within our control, while others' demands and expectations are not. If we continually surrender our own well-being for others, we're effectively allowing our peace of mind to be governed by external forces. Stoicism and the courage to say no. How do you feel when you think about saying no to someone? Does the word carry a weight, a sense of guilt or fear? Many of us have been conditioned to believe that saying no makes us less kind, less caring. Yet, Stoicism reminds us that the word no is often a vital part of maintaining our virtue. When we assert our boundaries, we're honoring our own well-being and respecting the limitations of what we can sustainably offer to others. The Stoics believed that boundaries allow us to act from a place of abundance rather than obligation. By mindfully deciding where our kindness begins and ends, we protect ourselves from the dangers of overextension. Have you ever noticed that when you operate without boundaries, people tend to request more and more from you? Without a firm no, there is no end to what others might ask, and this relentless demand can strip away your sense of autonomy, leaving you depleted and perhaps even resentful. When kindness hinders growth. Kindness without boundaries can not only drain us, but it can also stifle the growth of those we care about. When we provide unending support without encouraging self-reliance, we inadvertently prevent others from developing their own resilience and strength. Stoicism teaches that true kindness should empower others rather than make them dependent on us. Marcus Aurelius would argue that our role in helping others is not to take over their struggles, but to support them in a way that strengthens their ability to navigate life on their own. Are there relationships in your life where your kindness may be enabling dependency? Are you helping others in a way that respects their potential to grow and overcome challenges? By reflecting on these questions, we can better understand the nature of our kindness and realign it with Stoic principles of empowerment and self-sufficiency. Maintaining boundaries as a form of inner peace. Setting boundaries is not just about protecting your energy, it's about preserving your inner peace. When we clearly define what we're willing and able to offer, we're able to give from a place of sincerity rather than compulsion. Stoicism values inner tranquility, a state that can only be maintained when we live in accordance with our values and limits. Every yes that violates your boundary creates inner conflict, a discord that eventually builds into stress and resentment. But how do you find the courage to set boundaries without feeling guilt or fear? Stoicism encourages us to view boundaries as an act of kindness to ourselves, one that preserves our ability to give genuinely and sustainably. By saying no when necessary, we maintain the energy and resilience needed to show up for others meaningfully. In this way, boundaries are not barriers, but pathways to a balanced and fulfilling life. In the end, boundaries allow us to give freely without losing ourselves. But even with boundaries, expectations can linger, and we may find ourselves feeling disappointed when kindness is not reciprocated. How do we manage these feelings? In the next section, we'll explore the Stoic wisdom of giving without expectation, and how releasing ourselves from reciprocity can free us from frustration. 3. Attachment to expectations. Reciprocity has its limits. Kindness, when offered with the hope of receiving something in return, can lead to a subtle yet powerful trap: expectation. Stoicism teaches that the virtue of generosity lies not in expecting gratitude or reciprocation, but in the act itself. Yet how often do we find ourselves feeling disappointed or even resentful when our kindness goes unnoticed or unacknowledged? This attachment to reciprocity, though human, is a source of frustration that can gradually drain our spirit. True Stoic generosity is about giving freely, detaching from outcomes, and finding fulfillment in the act itself. Consider the metaphor of planting a tree. When you plant it, you nourish it with water, sunlight, and care. You may hope that one day it will provide shade or bear fruit, but nature follows its own course. Storms may break its branches, droughts may stunt its growth, or seasons may pass without any visible reward. In the same way, Stoicism reminds us that kindness should be given with an open heart, detached from the expectation of a return. Epictetus, a renowned Stoic philosopher, emphasized this detachment, teaching that we should focus on our actions rather than on outcomes that lie beyond our control. Reflection: why do we expect something in return? Have you noticed how the simple act of kindness can sometimes be clouded by the hope of acknowledgement or reciprocity? Why does this happen? Is it human nature, or have we learned to equate generosity with an unspoken exchange? Stoicism suggests that our expectations are born from a desire for validation and a longing to feel valued. When kindness is given without expectation, it becomes an expression of our character rather than a transaction. Imagine, for example, lending a helping hand to a friend in need, expecting that they will one day reciprocate. But what if that day never comes? The reality is that life moves forward, memories fade, and people's priorities shift. Stoicism teaches us to give without attachment, understanding that each act of kindness is a reflection of who we are, not a means to an end. This approach frees us from the emotional weight of unmet expectations, allowing us to continue being kind without feeling depleted or taken advantage of. Stoicism and the joy of giving freely. In Stoicism, the joy of giving lies in the act itself. When we align our generosity with this Stoic principle, we become liberated from the disappointment of unfulfilled expectations. Do you remember a time when your kindness went unappreciated? How did it feel? Stoicism would advise that the sting of this feeling arises from a misalignment with the virtue of selfless generosity. Epictetus spoke of focusing only on what is within our control, and this includes our own actions, not the response of others. But how can we cultivate this mindset in a world that often views kindness as an exchange? Stoicism invites us to embrace a profound sense of independence in our actions. When we act out of genuine goodwill, unburdened by the hope of reciprocity, our kindness becomes self-sustaining and deeply fulfilling. Each time we extend help or compassion without expectation, we strengthen our emotional resilience, protecting ourselves from feelings of bitterness or resentment. The freedom of letting go. Imagine the emotional freedom that comes from giving without expecting anything in return. When we release the need for acknowledgement, we're no longer bound by the actions or responses of others. Instead, we find satisfaction in knowing that we acted in alignment with our values. This freedom is central to Stoicism, which teaches that true peace of mind comes from focusing only on what we can control, our own intentions and actions. Are there relationships in your life where you feel the weight of unreciprocated kindness? Perhaps friendships, family connections, or professional relationships where you often give but rarely receive? Stoicism encourages us to release these burdens by adjusting our perspective. When we view our acts of kindness as gifts rather than transactions, we foster a sense of inner peace that is immune to the actions of others. As Marcus Aurelius would advise, we must look inward, finding our validation in our own integrity rather than in external praise or recognition. The Stoic practice of giving wisely. While Stoicism emphasizes the joy of giving freely, it also encourages us to give wisely. This means being mindful of where and how we extend our kindness. Do we offer support to those who truly appreciate it, or do we find ourselves repeatedly giving to those who take it for granted? Stoicism teaches us to practice discernment, valuing our time and energy by sharing it with those who respect our generosity. Seneca, another influential Stoic, believed that kindness is a treasure to be given thoughtfully, not indiscriminately. Consider for a moment how you might shift your approach to kindness. Can you identify areas where you give with the hope of reciprocation, and how might it feel to let go of that expectation? By embracing the Stoic principle of self-sustaining kindness, we not only protect our peace of mind, but also create a form of generosity that enriches us. This balanced approach to giving allows us to extend kindness without losing ourselves in the process. When kindness is practiced without expectation, it becomes a true source of joy. However, without boundaries, even the most selfless acts can lead others to perceive us as fragile or overly available. How can we protect ourselves from the cycle of overextension and exploitation? In the next section, we'll explore the Stoic wisdom of asserting our self-worth and resilience. 4. Overextension weakens resilience. Don't let kindness become a weakness. When kindness is boundless and unchecked, it risks being perceived not as a strength but as a vulnerability. Over time, the habit of bending over backward for others can lead others to see us as fragile or easily exploited. This cycle of overextension often attracts those who see our generosity as an opportunity, not a virtue. Stoicism teaches the importance of resilience, of standing firm, and of not allowing ourselves to become vulnerable through unguarded kindness. The ancient Stoics believed that our sense of worth should be self-contained, rooted in inner strength rather than in others' perceptions. Cicero, a respected figure in Stoic philosophy, wisely observed, "What you think of yourself is much more important than what others think of you." This notion captures the Stoic value of self-respect. True kindness, when accompanied by boundaries, commands respect. But when offered without restraint, it can, ironically, lead others to disregard our worth. Reflection: are you overextending yourself? Have you ever felt undervalued, as though your efforts go unnoticed or unappreciated? Stoicism encourages us to evaluate our actions and question whether they serve our values or if they're driven by a need to please others. Overextension is often a sign that we are giving from a place of insecurity, fearing rejection or disapproval if we don't continuously say yes. This fear can lead to a pattern where we stretch ourselves thin, exhausting our energy, time, and even emotional well-being. The Stoics believed that kindness is not about endless self-sacrifice, rather, it's about genuine, sustainable support. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to stay grounded, to prioritize his own integrity over others' expectations. Stoicism teaches us that we cannot always be available to everyone. True resilience lies in understanding when to step back, protecting our time and resources from being endlessly consumed by those who see our kindness as a given. Stoicism and the power of no. How often have you found yourself afraid to say no, worried that others may perceive you as unkind or unsupportive? Saying no can feel challenging, especially for those who have developed a habit of constant availability. Yet Stoicism reminds us that boundaries are essential to self-respect. When we assert our limits, we communicate to others that we value our own time and well-being. By saying no when necessary, we reinforce our own resilience and self-worth. Cicero's assertion that self-perception outweighs the opinions of others serves as a powerful reminder of this Stoic lesson. What if you placed greater importance on what you think of yourself than on the opinions of others? How might it feel to let go of the need to please, embracing a version of kindness that is authentic and balanced? When we begin to assertively set boundaries, we cultivate an inner strength that not only protects our peace of mind, but also fosters respect from others. Cultivating resilience through boundaries. In Stoicism, resilience is not about rigidly withdrawing from others or refusing support. It's about discerning when and where our kindness is best placed. This philosophy doesn't encourage isolation, but advocates for a balanced approach. The Stoics would ask, are we kind out of genuine goodwill, or are we driven by a desire to be needed? The latter often leads to a cycle of dependency, where others grow accustomed to our unbounded support and may even exploit it. When kindness lacks boundaries, it becomes easy for others to overlook our worth. Stoicism suggests that we should guard our kindness carefully, offering it in ways that are meaningful rather than habitual. Have you ever felt that others expect you to be available at all times? Does this constant availability lead you to feel undervalued, as though your only role is to meet the needs of others? By setting boundaries, we cultivate resilience, reminding others that our kindness is not an obligation, but a mindful choice. Embracing the power of self-respect. Self-respect is one of the most powerful forms of kindness we can practice, both for ourselves and in our relationships with others. Stoicism teaches that by valuing ourselves, we attract the respect of those around us. When we act from a place of self-worth, we naturally develop connections that are mutual, based on understanding and appreciation rather than convenience. Boundaries do not isolate us. They protect the integrity of our relationships, ensuring that we are valued for who we are, not just for what we can provide. By seeing yourself as worthy of boundaries and respect, you demonstrate to others that your kindness is a strength, not a weakness. People may initially push against these boundaries, especially if they've grown accustomed to your constant availability. But over time, your assertion of self-worth cultivates a respect that is far more valuable than any fleeting validation. Cicero's words ring true. The respect we gain from others often mirrors the respect we hold for ourselves. Stoicism's call to assertive kindness. Stoicism calls us to practice a form of kindness that's assertive, mindful, and resilient. It's a kindness that understands the importance of self-respect and doesn't compromise our own well-being for the sake of pleasing others. Can you recall a time when you held back from saying no, only to feel exhausted or even resentful later on? How might your life change if you practiced saying no when necessary, embracing a generosity that is honest and sustainable? By embracing Stoic principles, we create a new foundation for kindness, one that is rooted in strength, not fragility. When we cultivate self-respect, we naturally attract relationships that are enriching and reciprocal. Stoicism reminds us that we cannot protect others' well-being at the expense of our own. True resilience comes from valuing ourselves, setting boundaries, and offering kindness from a place of balance. As we've explored, kindness without balance can indeed ruin our lives, leading to burnout, resentment, and a loss of self-worth. But with Stoicism as our guide, we learn to practice kindness in a way that respects our inner peace and values. Let this serve as a reminder that true generosity comes from a place of strength, resilience, and self-respect. As we conclude, remember that kindness is not simply a matter of giving endlessly, but of giving wisely. Stoicism encourages us to cultivate boundaries, detach from expectations, and practice self-respect. Are you ready to embrace a form of kindness that is as empowering as it is fulfilling? Can you see how this approach might change the way you interact with others and with yourself? If this message resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments below. Let us know how Stoicism has helped you approach kindness in a new way. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support our channel as we continue exploring these Stoic principles together. Thank you for watching, and may you find peace and fulfillment in the path of mindful generosity.